the recording is recording, and we're just going to continue talking, just like we've been.
Yep.
Bit of you.
Yep.
I'll give you questions, but I may not follow them in that order. It just
Yep.
depends on what you say, and I might ask you about something. I won't go into any kind of grey areas or things that I know that have been upsetting for you in the past. This is quite a positive yarn around just getting people to see the diversity of Aboriginal people across Australia is the whole purpose of the videos.
Well, that's really good, isn't it? Because it's about time people saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I come backwards and then we'll start, right? I'll do acknowledge, and then I'll introduce you as part of my acknowledgement, and then I will throw over to you going, tell me who you are, where you're from, and then we'll continue yarning from there.
Okay.
Cool?
Yep.
Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a really special friend of mine on, Sharyn, and I'll introduce you to Sharyn in a second. But before we do start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently calling in from. I'm here on the beautiful lands of the Wurundjeri people in Melbourne, and I want to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I want to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are joining us today. And I want to pay respect to my friend Sharyn, who is actually joining us today. Hi, Sharyn.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. So before we do start, I just want you to actually tell us who you are and where you're from.
Well, I'm just going to say I'm on Doodarowa country now. So I'll pay my respects to the traditional owners of the country here, past and present. Originally, my family was from New South Wales in Nangus. I was born in Albury in New South Wales. I don't know, I'm a social worker.
Yep.
And I've worked in family violence, specifically Aboriginal family violence, for the last 18 years.
Nice. So go back to when you were, what made you want to become a social worker?
I did a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice, like quite a few years ago. Anyway, I started that at RMIT in Melbourne, and then I fell pregnant. So I came back home here, and then I finished that. It took me 10 years, but finished that through Edith Cowan University in Perth. Anyway, then I was in a not such good relationship. It was full of family violence. And when I remember my ex-partner saying to me one day, like, you'll never be anything. And that's when I went, after we split up, I went, no, I'm going to do social work and I will become a social worker. And not that I've ever gone to him, I'm a social worker, but it still makes me feel good inside that I did that. I did that while I raised 3 kids and worked 2 jobs. So, yeah. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah. What do you like about being a social worker?
I just love the contact with people. Yeah. And listening to their stories, and a lot of times providing them with choices, not telling anyone what to do, but providing them with choices that they may have never thought about. And I think one of the most surprising things is when you work with people, you will find, I was working with a woman one day in Melbourne, and we were off to court for an intervention order, and her most important thing was to get hold of a smoke. Like, and I'm thinking, you're homeless, we're going to court, you know, and I think it's taking those things into account and understanding where someone's coming from as you're working with them. Yeah. Yeah.
I think sometimes people forget those little things.
Yeah. Because I was like, what? You're just worried about a smoke, and I'm like, whoa. But yeah, then I went, wow, that's important to you. I can't buy them for you, but if you want to get some, we'll stop and get some. So
now you said that you grew up in Albury. Yes.
well, I was born in Albury, because in the old days, babies were all born in Albury if you lived in Wodonga. But now it's the opposite. All babies are born in Wodonga, even if you're from Albury.
Yeah.
Change of the health system.
How did that work during lockdown though?
Oh, that was a tough one because you weren't allowed to go to Albury unless you had a good reason. But,
Yeah.
and there was long lines a lot of the time to get through. So that was a pain. But like I went through a couple of times and just said I had a son over there that had mental health issues and I needed to go see him. That was sort
Yeah.
of true. But yeah, that got you across when you wanted to go across. But I had a friend of mine who lived in her sister lived in Wodonga and she had cancer, and my friend lived in Albury and had to come over and pick up her sister and take her back to have her chemo done. So imagine, like, I can't even think what that would have been like having to cross that border 4 times in a day with, you know, your sick sister. Yeah. So that was, yeah, not, I found that not a really good thing. There should have been things in place for people like that.
So growing up, how much Aboriginal studies did you learn at school?
None. Nothing. Nothing. And I read that question and I went, wow, we really need to be teaching young people. And that's where we need to start to change what's happening now in society with, well, with Aboriginal people, with a lot of other things too. Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to start in school so they're learning about, because I notice people all put Aboriginal people in the one box. They think
Yeah.
every Aboriginal person knows every Aboriginal person, which isn't true. And the box that they put them in is usually not, is a really wrong box about alcoholism and drug use and homelessness and all that. And we need to change that as we move along.
Now, you work in family violence, and I think one of the biggest stereotypes that I try to get out there is that people associate Aboriginal women, and I always call it Aboriginal women's family violence kind of thing. But the reality is most of the violence against our women are not from Aboriginal men.
I was listening to something that came out of JIRA the other day, and it said that 72% of women were with non-Aboriginal men.
Yeah.
And see, that's another thing we really need to change. I see it happening sometimes when you hear people talk, they will say they're not with Aboriginal men, but I think we've got to get that more out there because that bad focus on Aboriginal men is so wrong when it's not Aboriginal men, and the way those non-Aboriginal men that I've seen treat their women is absolutely disgusting. There's so much racism in that family violence that, yeah, happens.
Yeah. So what made you decide I want to do family violence? Because that's a big area to go to.
Yeah, well, I suppose lived experience of family violence. And I just went, nah. My first job was not, it was with a community centre in Albury, but within that centre, there was quite a bit of family violence. And that's where my passion for helping people came in the family violence area.
Yeah. During your social work degree, did you cover any Aboriginal subjects or issues in your social work degree?
Oh, are you kidding? No, no. And we just touched on family violence as well. So there's 2 things now, and 2 things that then should have been coming into play in social work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because I,
especially the Aboriginal people that should have been part of social work.
yeah,
How
like when
about
I did my
you?
we did my social work degree, we didn't even have an Aboriginal unit in it. I chose to do an elective at a different university just so I could actually understand the theory behind how Indigenous issues can be incorporated into all the other units that I've studied, which is what that unit actually did. But I had to go to a different university to get that because the university that I studied my social work degree had very little in it at all.
Yeah.
We had a lot of very little family violence in it as well. I think we covered it in about 2 weeks. in the
Yeah, I
course.
think I did 1 week.
Yeah, and mainly it was covered through case studies, if that made sense.
Yeah,
Like they didn't tell us about much of the what was actually happening with family violence per se, but it was like, here's your case study, and she's just left her husband because she's been going through some domestic violence issues. And then you had to put the picture together yourself,
yeah,
which for some was really hard, and some people it was traumatic because they had their own lived experience.
yeah,
But I do that universities are doing that a little bit better now,
yeah,
because they didn't when I did my courses like you.
yeah. Because my son, one of my sons did a community services course, and in that they had a non-Aboriginal person teaching Aboriginal stuff in that course, and they told them that never look an Aboriginal person in the eye. I said to him,
Mm,
no. I said that's not what happens here in Victoria. Like it's I don't know. And even today, because I was working at TAFE and I had to do their induction, and even in their induction it says not to look Aboriginal people in the eye. And
yeah,
I'm just like, wow, like explain that a bit more.
yeah,
Don't just say don't look an Aboriginal person in the eye, because you're teaching people, they're probably not going to be scared of an Aboriginal person because they don't know how to, speak to them, have a conversation with them. Yeah, that just blows me away.
do you think that's what's missing a lot in courses? Like, even when they do talk about Aboriginal issues, it's normally about social determinants and sometimes what the gaps are, but there's very little practical skills taught in a lot of courses around working with Aboriginal people.
Well, I think it is missing, and I think we've got to separate like people who live out in the Northern Territory and that on the missions and stuff. It's such a different lifestyle there than what we have in Victoria. And I
Yeah,
think when people teach Aboriginal things, it's like everybody's all the same. And I think that needs to be like they have to bring it down to what the different areas, what happens in them. Yeah, I just
yeah,
find, I always say to people, I've got friends who have been taken from their parents when they were young because of things. I've got friends who were part of the stolen generation. I have friends, blah, blah, blah. They've all come from different spaces. They all think differently. Don't think that everyone thinks the same. It's
yeah,
like with Lydia Thorpe and the King. Now, a lot of people said good on her, but then I know friends of mine said that was disgusting what she did. So there's a difference in how, and I think we've got to start taking, or people need to take notice of that. Not just
yeah.
us, but other people need to learn from that and not think we all think the same.
No, we don't all look the same. We don't all think the
No,
same. We've
no,
all got different things
yeah.
and different understandings of what does Aboriginality actually mean to us.
Well, I think
Yeah,
it means, I think Aboriginality means where your spirit sits more so
yeah,
than anything else. And I find that it's really frustrating. And when I went into this job, someone said to me, this is an Aboriginal friend of mine, blah, blah, blah. It's not even Aboriginal. I'm like, well, yes, she is. Because
mm,
I know that. And I don't think we've got any right to judge someone on skin color, what they're doing, where they are in life, like because of, oh, she's not Aboriginal. Because
yeah,
like I know this woman is.
yeah,
Yeah. But just like, I just find that really frustrating. And I know quite a number of people who have Aboriginal in their family, but they will not identify.
mm,
So yeah.
yeah.
But
And I think it's hard for people. I often see in cultural awareness training, when I actually do say that, there are people that don't identify. A lot of the non-Indigenous people, well, why wouldn't they identify? Why wouldn't they embrace their culture? Why wouldn't they? So there's still a very lack of understanding about starting off with why was it often hidden to start off with,
Yeah,
and then over generations, why it still hasn't always come out either.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that. And that's a difficult one. I see a lot on Facebook where there's people apparently getting high up jobs and they're supposedly not Aboriginal. I don't really agree with that. But
Yeah, I
I,
think it is when people just come out and going, look, I'm Aboriginal, and then they get these positions where they're supposed to provide cultural advice to management, and or they're supposed to liaise with community, and they struggle at either doing those two things because they don't actually have the the understanding or the experience.
yeah, and they're the ones that are there for the pay packet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a question. How do you define leadership?
How do I find leadership as being, as a leader, I think you need to be approachable,
Yep.
very approachable by those underneath you. Um, I mean, you've got to have a strong understanding of leadership in any role that you're in, but I also think you've got to set the example, because
Yeah.
in my world, you're a role model for the people that you're working with, and you should be setting that role model for them to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find it, you get lots of micromanagers and things like that, just like, nah, that's
Yeah.
not the way to do it. And I think you've got to be like understanding, um, realize people have lives outside of work also is a big part of it. And I think that's for anybody that, whether you're Aboriginal or from the cold community, we've all got to think about that we have lives outside of that. But
Yeah.
then I also believe that when you go to work, you have to leave that behind as much as you can. But to me, you would speak to your manager and tell them blah, blah, blah's happening so that they know.
Yeah.
But then you've got to do your job as well, because I see work as a place to get away from those things that are bothering you at home, because you can think about something else for 8 hours of the day.
Yeah. And that's hard for some people who work with their family,
Oh, yeah, that's so.
which we see a lot in community.
I know. And people from families won't go to certain organisations because certain people are there and they'll know what they're there for. And then they're like, a lot of that privacy and confidentiality is broken in an Aboriginal organisation, which I find really, really, really wrong.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm working in an Aboriginal organisation up here, I saw that a lot. But I noticed when I went to Melbourne and worked down there, it didn't happen as much, because I think
Yeah.
because where you're sitting as an organisation, you're probably not with people a lot. So yeah,
Yeah.
you work in a whole different way. But like, I used to have women turning up to my house at 2 o'clock in the morning because of family violence. And I went to
Yeah.
Melbourne and I didn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And now I will never do it again, because I'll put boundaries in place, because I've realized I need to have boundaries in place. I can't do this. Yeah.
And I like how you said that, because I think the same thing when I first did social work. It was really hard because I actually had family and people in my house as well that I didn't know the boundary, if that made sense. And
Yeah.
there was no place for them to go. So yeah, I was lending them money and I was actually giving more than my role as a social worker should be because of that community and family influence where I could see that I have broken the cycle and I want to help them break the cycle. But the first thing I need to do is look systemically, I can't break it. I can work with
Mhm.
it,
Yeah.
but I was trying to save everybody and I can't possibly save everybody.
Yeah. I think I remember a woman who wanted a roast chicken, right, for her dinner that night. So I paid for this roast chicken, and she said she'd give me the money back next week. Well, that was probably 15 years ago, you know. Not that I'm worried about that, but that's something that sticks in my mind. But then there's another woman that I worked with, and she'd often ask if you could lend her $10, and you would, and she'd have that money for you the next week. So I don't know, sometimes, well, we shouldn't be picking, but sometimes you can pick who will pay you back and who's not going to. And I think that's something we get caught up in when we first start, and we're not understanding how things work as much when as a social worker, and then you've got to draw the line. And because I always say to friends of mine, don't keep giving people money, because you're enabling them to behave how they're behaving. Because while they're getting money off you, they're not going to do anything better to better themselves. Yeah.
And they're not just probably getting money from you, they're probably getting money from
everyone. Buy a packet of smokes.
Hey, a word that gets thrown around a lot in community services is reconciliation. What does reconciliation mean?
Look, I find these like working on reconciliation plans and that, I find it a bit weird, because a lot of places are just doing them because they have to do them, not because they care. I find that a bit frustrating. I'd just love to see reconciliation. To me, is working evenly across the board and understanding each other, because that's something we really need to do. Yeah, I worked for a place and they were writing their thing, their reconciliation plan. I went, oh my God. Like, yeah, I'm just like, wow. But anyway, I don't know what happened with that, because I left that job, but I'm just like, this is not how this is meant to work. You're meant to put some oomph into this, you know, to care.
And I often find that sometimes when there's Aboriginal people in organisations, they're the ones that are actually driving the reconciliation action plan, because it seemed to be handed over to them to do.
Yeah. And well, that's like a lot of things, isn't it? Oh, yeah, we've got an Aboriginal worker, they'll do that, or we'll ask them that, or they can do that. And you just got to go, no. No, that's not my role.
Sharyn, it's NAIDOC next week. Can you organise something for us? Because you're Aboriginal.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. I just struggle with some of those people. Yes.
What's some tips or advice you might give new social workers, non-Indigenous social workers, tips you might give them about working with Aboriginal people?
Well, I did some work with the Orange Door, and that was speaking to groups of new people in the Orange Door, which I found very frustrating, because like I said what I needed to say, and then I was asking if anyone had questions, and they all just sat there looking at me. And I'm thinking, surely you've got a question. Ask the question. Like, and I said, it doesn't matter what you ask. We can like try to answer it, or I can find out later, and you know, all that sort of stuff. But I just find that really frustrating, that people seem to be too scared to ask. But to me, ask. Don't just go off and do what you think. And I think you've also got to remember too that people from different places have different ideas on how things go. And
do you think people are too scared to offend, and that's why they're not asking?
So. Yep. I worked with Safe and Equal and JIRA on a project. It was a great project. It was to help mainstream organisations work with Aboriginal people in a better way. And it was really a really positive project, except one organisation did not show up, not once, for a meeting. But on the day when they did the, all get together and have a big feed and, all that stuff, suddenly they were there saying how they knew how to work with Aboriginal people. I went, how do you know?
Yeah.
Because you don't. You never come to a meeting. You never listen to anything. Yeah. So I was a bit annoyed about that because, yeah, you didn't put any effort in on the way to get to this part. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think organisations want to reconcile, or put it in a different way, do you think organisations really want to know how to work with Aboriginal people?
Well, from my experience, I'd say that's a 50-50.
Yeah.
In one of the mainstream family violence organisations I worked in, I kept suggesting things to do because I kept saying we seem to get more positive outcomes in the Aboriginal communities with these ways of working, and they would not listen. No, I was just shut down straight away. No, yeah, nothing. And I found that really frustrating because I thought just small things that they could do that could change the way they work with women and have better outcomes for them. But yeah, they didn't want to know about it. Yeah, that really frustrated me. But yeah, they really don't want to know.
Yeah. And I always ask this question of my guests, but if I gave you a magic wand and $1 zillion
Oh,
and you could fix anything in Aboriginal affairs, where would you start?
oh, gee, that's a big, big question, isn't it? I would like to make it so that people understood Aboriginal people and Aboriginal culture, etc. But I also, within that, there's the intersectionality of like the LGBTQI, the rainbow family, which is what my friend has told me to call because I can never remember the letters. But like things like that, people with disabilities, we need to work in, so we're catching everybody. And even like with the culturally and linguistically diverse people, because there are Aboriginal people that have another nationality as part of themselves. Yeah, and I think we need to have a look at the big picture there and bring it all together. And I think that I always find reconciliation, intersectionality seem to be words that are just thrown around. Oh, same with self-determination. Like they love throwing that word around, but they do nothing with it. It's just in all the paperwork. But yeah, we need to really work on those things and use them in the way we work. And I believe intersectionality is a big one because you can have an Aboriginal woman who may be gay and have a disability. So we're not just looking at an Aboriginal woman. We have to look at those other two intersections to help her.
Yeah. And as well as that, she could be married to a Muslim man or
Yep.
man, which means her kids have got those dual nationalities as well.
Yeah. And her religion could be something totally different. So we've always got to take those things into, our consideration when we work with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everyone, just because you identify as Aboriginal doesn't mean there's not another connection there somewhere with something else.
Another word that gets thrown around a lot is cultural safety.
Oh, yeah.
What makes you feel culturally safe when you go to an organisation?
Well, do you know, many years ago, because they kept putting up those signs, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people welcome in this organisation. So they had this, sign up on the wall. Anyway, I didn't take much notice. I just, it's there. And then I went down to Melbourne and one of the guys, I was doing a course down there, and one of the guys said, "Oh my God, those signs piss me off. Like, how dare they put those signs up to say we're welcome here?" I just went, wow, isn't this good to see someone else's perspective on this.
Yeah.
And it makes you stop and think about how you had thought about it. I'm just like, oh yeah, walk in, it's okay. But to see that, he was like, well, why? Why do we have to, why does this organisation have to say they accept us? They should just accept us without having to put that on the thing. But I just find cultural safety, you do cultural safety training and you get all different ideas from different people. That's what I find. And I think for me, it's great to get those different ideas because it makes you think about things differently. Because you might have thought, oh, this is a great way to work, but then you can add something in from what someone else is talking about. I always remember a woman that we did some cultural safety training with, and her ideas were so different to anything I'd ever done. I can't remember her name or when it was, but yeah, I'm just like, wow, whoa. So yeah, I think for me, it's good to get different perspectives because then it can change your look on things and how you see things. Yeah.
I like how you said that. And I think that most, even Aboriginal people, still need cultural awareness training themselves, I think.
Yeah.
But I also think that a lot of Aboriginal, non-Indigenous people that come to my training sometimes say to me, oh, AJ, I thought I'd done cultural awareness before, if that makes sense. Like it's like a one-stop, let's go to a 4-hour session and then it's a tick a box activity. But the way you described it then was cultural awareness and cultural safety training is ongoing. You're always learning and you're looking at different perspectives all the time.
And I think the thing is, it is as much for Aboriginal people as it is for anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember going to cultural awareness training up here, and there was a bloke there, and you knew he'd been sent by his work to do this, because I don't know what he'd done, but obviously something. And he was the rudest person. And I knew the trainer, and I said to her, I said, how do you do this? Because I wanted to lose the plot at him because he was so damn rude. And she said, no, Sharyn, we just ignore them. We just ignore them because everyone else in the room is like behind us and listening and taking note, and that one person doesn't matter. So that was a good lesson to me, because I think sometimes we focus on something, like I focused on him and I'm thinking, oh my God, I was so, because to me, if he didn't want to be there, shut up and listen. Just listen. Don't grunt and groan and all that. But yeah. But there was a lesson for me that some people you're not going to be able to teach them. They don't want to be there. They're there because they've been told to come there. But you just hope that later down the track he thinks about what was said that day and maybe something in his mind will change.
I'm just watching the time. So I've got 2 final questions to ask you. And my first one is, what's something that people don't know about Sharyn that you don't normally share?
Oh God, I don't know. Oh, probably because I noticed with this new job I've started, I've very well closed myself off to everybody that's in that workspace.
Yeah.
And that's probably something that people, like, I say hello and that sort of stuff, but I'm just like, no, I'm not getting caught up in any friendships or anything there. And that's probably something I've done quite a bit. That's probably something people haven't noticed that I do, because, yeah, I'm very good at that. Yeah. But then there's always people, say like you, that you feel comfortable with and you're not going to shut out. But I don't know. And I suppose it's sitting in that place, like at my new work, and seeing how it goes and just learning about the people around you before. That's probably something people don't know, that I can pretty easily cut things off, which is not a good thing sometimes.
What's one key message you would like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
That they take notice, that they are not afraid to ask questions about to Aboriginal people. You know, their question might be, you know, they're probably thinking in their head, oh, that's a stupid question and I'll probably upset them. But a lot of times you're better off to ask the question than walk away with the knowledge that's wrong. Yeah, with what you think. And like I said before, lots of people have different opinions on different things. And I think that's something that the whole of society needs to understand. And to me, it reminds me of when COVID was hitting pretty bad and Asian people were getting beaten up down in Melbourne just because they were Asian and they thought COVID come from Asia. Like, really? You know,
Yeah.
just remember, these people have nothing to do with that. And I think and not judging people is important too. Like, get to know them. Don't be afraid of someone. Just ask them. And I remember working with a trans man, and he wore women's earrings and dressed like a woman, but he had a beard. And every time I worked with him, I'd go in and apologize straight away because I'd say to him, I'm going to call you by the wrong name, like use the wrong pronouns, because it was just hard. And he would pick me up every time I did, but we had a laugh about it because I'd said that before we started. And I think that's something we need to be able to say, you know, hey, I don't know, I'm going to ask you this question. And you'll probably find out that you'll get a really good answer.
And I'm not going to get it right all the time.
No.
Yeah. No. Well, I think that is a beautiful ending to our little podcast. So I want to say thank you very much for hanging with me. You know how much I care and respect you. I've known
so do I.
we've known each other for a number of years. And I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you for joining me. So guys, please thank Sharyn. And I want to say thanks for Sharyn.
Thank
guys,
you.
I'll see you guys at the next podcast.
Bye.
Out. Done. So let me just